Hi there. My name is Alina, and I'm a recovery and transformation coach. I make videos talking about my own journey through recovering my addiction to alcohol, burnout, and self loss. And one thing I know very well is how to be stuck, and also how hard it is to get unstuck. I tried a whole bunch of things once I knew that I was in a real pickle. And it wasn't until I was introduced to the holistic model where I really started to unravel and connect the dots to how I got into my own dysfunction. And when I became a coach, I specifically trained through a program that uses the holistic model because I feel like it is sort of the unlock that a lot of us miss or just not aware of when it comes to moving through stuckness and things that we want to change, and we're just simply unable to keep those changes long term. So, what I'm talking about with the holistic model is we're multi layered beings. So, yes, we have a body and we have a mind, but it all is working together on four different levels, being the physical, the mental, the emotional, and the spiritual. So, usually, when we wake up on a Monday morning and we're ready to make that change, we're usually just focusing on one level, or we're thinking like, I need to change my thoughts around this. I need to change my mindset. Or you're finally going to commit to that behavior change and make it long lasting. The problem is that we're not just our thoughts and our actions. What makes up the whole human experience is, yes, having a body, but also having a heart and a history of lived experience that sticks with us, and a soul that most of us are very disconnected from. So I've found that when we're stuck, those layers or those levels of the physical, emotional, mental, and spiritual are scattered and they're not talking to each other. And usually we're stuck in all four levels or largely in a level that we don't consider or look at. And when these levels are all scattered and not talking to each other, this leads us right into survival mode, which is what I talk about a lot in our videos, and I use that in coaching. Survival mode is not where we want to be. I think that's self-explanatory. Survival mode is awful. What we want is to move into coherence and harmony, where all of those levels are talking to each other. This brings us to living in alignment. And this is also creator mode. This is integrating all of what makes us human into our lived experience and living in a more harmonious way. I think diet and exercise is a really obvious example. When people, especially the beginning of the year, they want to lose weight. So they sign up at the gym or they're committed to eating a certain way. And usually by mid-February, it's all out the window. My understanding of that is not necessarily a failure on the physical level, but what was paid attention to on the other levels. Another good example is having a major upset in your life that drives you towards going to therapy. Therapy certainly serves a purpose, but therapy is oftentimes really focusing on the emotional level, maybe to some extent the mental level. But if you're disconnected from your soul, your spiritual level, and your physical level is a mess, then all of that talk in therapy could go around in circles for years and you may not get anywhere. So let me just break down the four levels briefly and then go from there. The physical level is obviously the body, but it's also, how are you sleeping? How is your nervous system? This is where nervous system regulation really comes in. What are your hormones up to? Like, especially for women, if you are in the process of having children or menopause, This is a major disrupt in our physical level that if we're ignoring that and we're just in therapy talking about our stuff, looking at the physical level can really open up an awareness to what is going on in the body. The physical level is also where addiction lives, our relationship with food, our relationship to exercise. Phil Stutz, who I talk about all the time, talks about life force energy. He believes the first step of any transformation needs to be rooted firmly in the physical connection, building that life force energy from the physical up. I think that a lot of people have a strained relationship with their physical level for all kinds of reasons. So the physical level may not be the place to start for you, but it's certainly a level that should not be ignored. Then there's the mental level. These are all of our beliefs, our self-image, our identity, the stories we tell ourselves, subconscious patterns. This is the mindset work that you hear about so often. It's where negative thought loops are formed, negative thinking, worst case scenario, catastrophizing, living in a fear state. And then there's the emotional level. Think of emotion as energy in motion. And what the emotional level is asking of us is, where does emotion need to be moved? This is where our triggers and our projections come from. And this is when we don't deal with our feelings. We're not feeling our feelings. They get stored in our bodies in the emotional level. And this is where unprocessed grief, trauma, shame, anger, tenderness, our longing for things that we don't express out loud, what is not felt gets stored in our bodies and it comes out in our behaviors. So this is how you can tell yourself, I'm not going to drink a Coca-Cola for the next 2 weeks, and you're driving through a drive-thru at noon getting yourself a Coke that same day. And what this behavior looks like is addiction, overworking, people-pleasing, reactivity, anxiety, or feeling numb and really disconnected. And this is important, that disconnection, because it is actively blocking connection to ourselves, to other people. It keeps us protecting ourselves. We're protecting ourselves with having all of this stored emotion. And essentially, we're frozen in the past. The trick to the emotional level is getting better at feeling your feelings. And this is where you don't have to tell a story about it. You just have to feel it and honor it and let it move through. It's one of my favorite things that I've discovered is that I don't have to have a story for everything. I don't have to have a beginning, middle, and end and a tidy resolution to move stuff out of my body. What you're doing here is you're simply feeling, I have a feeling. I feel awful right now. It feels in my chest and I'm just going to breathe through it. And if you focus on the sensation of it, not a story, a sensation, just the feeling of where is it in my body, and then breathing through it, it usually only lasts 30 to 90 seconds. And then as it leaves, there's a shift. You will feel a noticeable difference. And what that difference is space being created with that energy leaving. And what that space creates is a perception change. And perception change is the whole game in getting unstuck. I think that we take for granted how much our perception creates our reality. That's why people who don't believe in manifestation, it's like, okay, whatever, you're already creating your own reality by your perceptions. So by feeling your feelings and moving out those blocks from your emotional level, you're clearing space, and that space gives you a new perspective. And my understanding of a perspective shift is a miracle. When I have had perspective shifts in my life, they have translated to tiny miracles and sometimes large ones. And then lastly, the most misunderstood level is the spiritual level. which is basically just a felt sense of connection to life. It's who we are innately, underneath all of the beliefs and the identity and the layers of wounding and trauma and protectiveness that we build for ourselves in survival mode. It's kind of where we're trying to get to feel that meaning and purpose in our life. As you start to clear space, as you start to feel your feelings, take care of your body, deal with your mental level and your stories and your subconscious reprogramming, you'll start to notice subtle shifts in how you're experiencing your day-to-day life. And this can look like true embodied love and compassion for yourself and other people. Being able to truly surrender control. This is where the serenity prayer is not just for recovery. I mean, the wisdom to know the difference between what you can control and what you can't is crucial in getting unstuck. You need to focus on what you need to change, but be wise to what is not yours to change. A strong spiritual connection gives you the ability to trust in uncertainty. Uncertainty, the unknown, this gets a lot of people stuck, and it keeps them stuck, not wanting to venture into the unknown territories. But when you have a connection to your spiritual self, there's a trust there that allows you to move onto a pathless path. And it's that feeling of being guided that is so meaningful to a lot of people. And I don't mean this in a religious way. This isn't religious. This is a connection to yourself that helps you move through the world through a spiritual sense, which everyone makes meaning of differently. But we're small, soft animals on this big, scary planet. It's understandable to be scared. Sometimes you don't want to live in a fear state, but it's understandable to feel overwhelmed just by day-to-day life. Opening up your spiritual level and really clearing that gives you a real clear connection to life outside of survival mode, deeply into creator mode. And something that I've noticed is that certain layers influence others. So, for example, the physical level, having really good sleep routine, taking care of your body, eating well, letting go of your addictions. That's a big one. Our physical level influences our mental level because our mental chatter is filtered through how safe the body feels. So if you're taking care of your fitness and your nutrition and you're getting sleep, and you're regulating your nervous system, you will notice your anxiety goes down, maybe your depression lessens, mental loops start to lessen, you start to soften around some of your rigid beliefs and identities. But a real clear one for me is how the emotional connects to the spiritual. When the emotional level is clogged and blocked by unprocessed emotions, that has a direct relation to how we're connecting to our life overall. So not only do these blocks block connection to ourselves and to others, it blocks us from that spiritual level that is so helpful, especially when we're trying to get unstuck. So the physical is the doorway to mental freedom, and the emotional is the doorway to spiritual freedom. And this is a crucial point, and that is spirituality or connection to our spiritual level is not something we add to our life, or if we clean up our life, it magically appears. It's already here. It's just covered by layers of trauma and protectiveness and blocks and all of the things that keep us stuck in life. So as we start to clear that space and have perception changes and increase our life force energy and have awareness about what our minds are up to, we start to have our spiritual lives open up, and that can have a massive meaning for people, whether you're recovering from addiction, burnout, self-loss, you name it. This is where very well-intentioned people stay stuck while doing everything quote unquote right. We can be doing everything right, but if we're only looking at one or two levels and we're ignoring other aspects of what makes up our lives, that is the issue. It's not a failure. You don't need to blame yourself. But can you be open to working on what keeps you stuck through all of these layers? For me, when I was, it started out with burnout, what was my first step. But then as I realized, oh man, I have a lot more to go. I've got self-loss and a massive problem with alcohol. My first step was the physical level. And I will admit, my strongest level is physical. That comes really easily to me. So that might have been why I chose that level first. But I knew that my nervous system was ridiculously dysregulated. And so my first order of business was a calm nervous system, getting better sleep, and just really diving into my yoga and meditation. All of that, I could feel my life force energy starting to build. I would think about morning Alina when I was preparing at night to go to bed and making choices so that morning Alina could have the morning she wanted to have. And then throughout all of that, my eating naturally cleaned up. As the alcohol left my body, I wanted to eat better, especially with all of the yoga and other mindful things I was doing. And as the alcohol left my body and I was taking really good care of my physical level, I noticed that my mental level started to balance out. And this is not to say that prescription medication isn't needed sometimes. Not what I'm saying. My issue was directly related to how I was living my life. So my physical body was getting strong. I was noticing how the mental chatter was just starting to really calm down. And I noticed at the beginning of all of my transformation journey that I had a lot of negative thoughts. I spent a great part of my day mental looping through anxiety and having really bad negative thoughts about myself and other people and situations. And it was worst case scenario and lots of catastrophizing. That all softened. And then as I worked on all of the stuff that triggered me and all of the ways that I projected onto other people and started to really feel what was going on with me, where I felt all of that self-betrayal of myself, allowed that to come in and feel it. And again, it's that feeling of it. I did it through visualization with an eye mask, laying on a couch, 20 minutes at a time, 30 minutes at a time. Sometimes I would use guided meditation, and sometimes I would journal a little bit and then lay back and process for a little while. All of that translated to lightness in my body. And I just started having that connection to my spiritual self like I've never had before. And I didn't realize what I was missing. It's like a version of myself that is pure and strong and loving and compassionate and trusting and intuitive and sensitive. I got to meet her again. And she might have been gone for a very long time. This is what makes my recovery really strong. I'm not talking just from alcohol. It's what keeps me on the path of living my life in a very intentional, spiritual way. It would be a betrayal to abandon myself the way I did before. When I catch myself in constant mental loops or catastrophizing, that's a signal to me that I'm out of balance and I need to get back and regulate myself. As I'm talking about this right now, where do you feel like your strongest level is if you wanted to start from somewhere? Or what area or what level is screaming for attention that may need to be addressed first. There's no right or wrong way. My cat's meowing in the background. What would it feel like to have space created in your life? What would a perception change do for your stuckness? What does it feel like to think, maybe it's not because I'm a failure, or blame yourself for not getting unstuck the way you want to? I'd love to hear any of your thoughts in the comments. Again, thank you for being here with me on this journey. More than anything, I want people to feel empowered to change their lives because I believe we're all capable of radical change. Thanks for being here with me.